Coming up next, rock's most notorious bad boy had been working on a piano song for about 8 years. It was actually the only song that he knew how to play on the piano, and he wanted his hard rock band to record this song. But they weren't a ballads band. They wanted to rock. They tried recording this epic so many times, it had more in common with classical music than rock and roll. At one point, the song was 25 minutes long. Now, in the end, the guitarist added 3 bold solos. They added a choir that included a future rock frontman, and they created the most expensive video ever, with a leading lady the singer handpicked from a magazine cover. Thing is, he would ask her to marry him before it was all over. Coming up next, the unbelievable story of one of the biggest songs ever on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you want to go behind the greatest stories of the songs that have become the soundtrack of your very life, this is your channel. Just make sure to subscribe below and click the bell so you never miss out on our daily content. And also make sure to visit professorofrock.com. You can check out our new merch and can take a look at our exclusive content at our Patreon. Both of these things help us to curate this channel and help it keep going. So in the early 80s, Axl Rose had a dream about a friend who was telling jokes while playing the piano in double time. Although it was just a dream, Axl remembered being perplexed as to why his friend, who was a great piano player, wasn't taking his musicianship seriously and encouraged him to break away from his comedic shtick. When Axl awakened from the dream was still vividly in his mind, and he carried out his feeling in the dream to create a song straight off the piano. Axl's piano dream became an obsession that slowly evolved over more than 8 years before it was finally recorded in 1990 and 91 as an epic ballad titled November Rain. It was to be included in Guns N' Roses' third album, the first of an ambitious double collection called Use Your Illusion, Volume 1 and 2. Musicians that Axl worked with before GNR developed into the biggest, baddest rock band in the world in the late 80s. They recall Axl playing the early incarnation of November Rain as early as 1983. Former LA Guns guitarist Tracy Guns remembers Axl playing the piano song that morphed into November Rain when they were working on an EP for LA Guns. Guns recounted that it was the only song that Axl knew how to play on the piano, and he was very proud of it, confidently proclaiming to Tracy Guns and his friends that someday this song is going to be really cool. Guns actually thought that the song was already cool back in the day, even though it was far from finished. Axl played the song whenever he could find a piano. He'd always step up to the piano and start playing it. When asked how he was going to finish the song, Axl responded, "I don't know what to do with it yet." As the years continued to go by, Axl began to come up with lyrics for his piano project. He wrote about being trapped in an unwanted relationship of unrequited love and the helplessness of not knowing how to get out of it. He wrote about the collapse of his first marriage and the emotional volatility of other close personal relationships in his life. The burning and the frustration of a one-sided love is conveyed in the first verse of Axl's November Rain. When I look into your eyes, I can see a love restrained. But darling, when I hold you, don't you know I feel the same? I guess Axl was really moved by Tommy Lee's piano playing in Motley Crue's '85 power ballad Home Sweet Home. He admired the simplistic beauty of the piano section and how powerfully it set up the track's heartwarming nostalgia. Tommy Lee's performance gave Axl the inspiration he was missing that would help him sketch the definitive arrangement for November Rain and get the song studio ready, to record. Music of Elton John is also a big influence on the final arrangement of November Rain. There were actually two Elton John songs that shaped November Rain. Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. That, of course, went to number 2. Pop smash for Elton in 1974. And Elton's dark concerto, Funeral for a Friend, Love Lies Bleeding, from the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road LP in 73. Now, the arrangement for November Rain begins with piano chords layered into an emotional orchestration of strings, woodwinds, and percussion. November Rain builds symphonically and vocally as the drama of the storyline intensifies. The track builds to a riveting coda. You can hear the influence of Elton's composition in this section of November Rain, which is similar to the swirling transition from Funeral for a Friend into Love Lies Bleeding. It was Guns N' Roses' new drummer Matt Sorum who replaced ousted GNR core hitter Steven Adler, who fell in love with the Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, and thought the structure of that song would be a great template to follow for the kind of epic track that they imagined for November Rain, and of course what it was destined to become. Sorum was a former session musician who had played with The Cult, and he was in Tori Amos's band when GNR recruited him to take over for Adler. The band waited 2 years for Adler to get clean from his vicious heroin addiction, and when he was still unable to perform, the group hired Sorum. Being a classically trained musician, Sorum brought a more sophisticated dimension to GNR. Sorum's classical sensibility is best exemplified on November Rain. The drum pattern for November Rain was it's created following a band rehearsal of the song. Now, before we go into the happenings of that particular rehearsal, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. The glasses I'm wearing right now, when you get your eyewear at Zenni.com, you're never going to have to deal with things like foggy lenses or glare with Zenni's advanced 2-in-1 anti-fog and anti-reflective coating. It's really amazing. If you go to Zenni.com, you can design your own pair today and add those features. So Axl and Matt were in the studio eating some takeout food from LA's iconic Greenblatt Deli, and Axl put on Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. Now, listening to Elton's number 2 pop smash from 74, the tom-toms in the track gave Matt goosebumps. He triggered an idea in him. Matt pointed out the sound of the toms to Axl and expressed his thoughts. Sorum imagined adding the tom-tom phrasing as pieces of November Rain, essentially serving as a melody that would work within the basic song structure. Now, before Sorum joined GNR, the band did not have a clue about music theory. They just were simply a ferociously raw rock and roll band that just wanted to be loud and dirty. When describing a specific sound component to the band, Sorum used expressions like pianissimo, instrumental, or mezzo forte, and the members at GNR would just stare at him with quizzical looks on their faces. A classical approach was uncomfortable for most of GNR, not for Axl, because he wanted orchestral luster for November Rain, but Slash and Duff McKagan, for instance, they just wanted to rock. After all, the balls out primal approach had worked phenomenally well for Appetite for Destruction, one of the greatest albums ever, and they thought, why mess with it? Still, Axl felt a karmic responsibility to follow his gut and break musical boundaries for GNR with a grand theatrical production. A small choir was added that included the voice of the late Shannon Hoon. Shannon, of course, was the lead singer of Blind Melon, who had a arranged song of their own that would hypnotize listeners in '93. We'll cover that for sure.
All I can say is that my life is pretty plain.
And Shannon, who, what a talent. Sadly, Shannon died of a cocaine overdose in 1995, just the age of 28. November Rain would not have been a timeless GNR classic without Slash's guitar brilliance. And there are 3 outstanding, spectacular Slash solos on the track, all very pivotal to the song's magnitude. The first Slash solo is front and center just after the 4-minute mark. The second solo is in the 5th minute. And the third Slash solo, triumphantly placed in the 7th minute, sets up the song's just enthralling breakdown. Axl's impassioned vocal on November Rain ranks among the strongest of his career, while the inspired breakdown, beginning at about 6 minutes and 48 seconds, and soars with Slash's solo at the 7:09 mark. That's what truly elevates November Rain to the epic proportion that Axl always dreamed of. Slash referred to November Rain as GNR's Layla song, comparing it to the epic rock classic by Derek and the Dominoes. It really was the 90s answer to Layla. The album version and the single version of November Rain are just a few clicks under 9 minutes at 8 minutes and 57 seconds, I believe. When the single broke into the top 10 of the national pop chart, that was in 92, it actually set a record as the longest song ever to reach the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100. November Rain is also the 3rd longest song to enter the Hot 100 chart, 2nd longest at the time of its release. November Rain eventually peaked at number 3 in America. It also went to number 15 on the mainstream rock chart. It went to number 2 in Portugal, number 4 in the UK, number 5 in Australia, number 9 in Germany, and number 3 in Ireland. November Rain was the 3rd single from GNR's Use Your Illusion 1, an album that, along with Use Your Illusion 2, also made the history books for Guns N' Roses. GNR made a bold move when they dropped Use Your Illusion 1 and Use Your Illusion 2 on the same date. The band was arguably the hottest band in the early 90s, so they could do just about whatever they wanted. They pretty much did just that. When the 2 albums were simultaneously released, Use Your Illusion 2 vaulted to the top of the Billboard 200 album chart, while Use Your Illusion 1 immediately grabbed the number 2 spot. That feat had not been achieved since 1974, when albums by the late Jim Croce held the number 1 and number 2 position on the Billboard album chart shortly before he died in a tragic plane crash. Pass me by. Use Your Illusion 1 debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, like I said, and it sold 685,000 copies in that first week. It was behind Use Your Illusion 2's first week sales of 770,000. According to the Nielsen SoundScan statistics, Use Your Illusion 1 has sold close to 6 million units in the US as of 2020. Axl always intended to do something extraordinary with November Rain. He initially conceived it to be part of a trilogy, with November Rain, Don't Cry, and Estranged to be just one extensive unified track. The final cut of November Rain settled in, like I said, just at under 9 minutes as a track on Use Your Illusion 1, but there was an early version of the song. Apparently it was more than 25 minutes long, which could have filled an entire side of an album. Now, Slash wrote in his autobiography that an 18-minute version of November Rain was recorded at a session with guitarist Manny Charlton of the band Nazareth in 1986, before the recording sessions for Appetite for Destruction began. The adaptation of November Rain to a music video was another over-the-top production. It was one of the most expensive music videos that was ever made. It's costing north of $1.5 million to make. The video was directed by Andy Morahan, who directed the hugely popular clips for Father Figure and Faith with George Michael. And he worked with GNR on the videos for Don't Cry and You Could Be The treatment for November Rain borrowed creative licenses from the novella Without You, written by Del James, a journalist and author of the short story collection The Language of Fear. Axl Rose saw model Stephanie Seymour on a magazine cover, and he immediately wanted her to be his co-star in the music video for November Rain. I remember that Seymour was one of the hottest models on the fashion scene in the early 90s, one of the stars of Victoria's Secret. Although Stephanie Seymour was not interested in doing music videos, she did make an exception when Axl and the GNR crew offered her the part. Very iconic. In the video, Stephanie and Axl get married, with Slash serving as best man and the rest of the band witnessing in the front row.
Darling, don't refrain.
When the wedding procession is over in the video, it begins to rain, and the next scene is Stephanie's funeral, taking place at the very same church that she was married to Axl. It was a creepy plot that perfectly enacted the theme of Axl's bleak tale of dying love. And when your fears subside and shadows still remain, oh yeah, I know that you can love me when there's no one left to blame.
Love me when there's no one left to blame.
So never mind the darkness, we still can find a way, because nothing lasts forever, even cold November rain.
Nothing lasts forever, even cold November rain.
Off camera, Stephanie Seymour and Axl Rose became lovers, as life imitated art there. It was another stormy relationship for Axl. The couple were engaged to be married in 93, but they broke up shortly after, never going through with the nuptials. The video for November Rain, it won the award for Best Cinematography at the 1992 MTV Video Music Awards, when that mattered at one time. It's one of the most memorable videos in music history.
Everybody needs some time on their own.
And I remember just being transfixed by the imagery in that video, the music, the feeling. I had just transitioned from being into glam metal and hard rock since I was a little kid, to being just entrenched in modern rock and new wave at that point. Depeche Mode, The Cure, The Smiths, New Order. I was becoming a bit of a music snob back then. I was swearing off all other music, especially hard rock and glam metal. I thought I was too good for it. Even though I still secretly loved all music, I couldn't hide it. I bought Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 day one. I was blown away by the progression of the band. Decades later, this song, it still sounds fresh. It still mesmerizes my soul. I miss that feeling, that my generation and the one before got when you got to go to the record store and buy the physical album. And the minute that it came out, and where you listen to the album track by track and just being knocked out by it. And that's how it was with Use Your Illusion Volume 1 and 2. It's just magic.
Can't love me when there's no one left to blame.
Poetically, GNR performed November Rain at the end of the MTV Video Music Awards with Sir Elton John teaming up to perform the prominent piano parts with Axl. It was spectacular. In July 2018, the video for November Rain became the first video from the 90s to surpass 1 billion views on YouTube. At the time of that particular achievement, GNR also had the most viewed 80s video, with Sweet Child of Mine surpassing 692 million views. Between 1986 and 93, Guns N' Roses rewrote the record books of rock history. If the landmark GNR album Appetite for Destruction, which is the best-selling debut album of all time, represents the last great hard rock record made entirely by human hands, then November Rain it represents the pinnacle of the power ballad era and perhaps the apex of the lavish, ostentatious music video era. They just don't make them like they used to. Leave us a comment below about this glorious power ballad that blew the world away. What are your memories of the time period where GNR released Use Your Illusion 1 and 2? What are your memories associated with this amazing, this beautiful song? Make sure to let us know in the comments below. We'll talk about it. If you like our content, we do invite you to be a full-time part of our channel. We'd love to have you in the community. Make sure to check us out on Patreon for even more content. And make sure to check out our merch, including our Vintage Years collection. It's all about helping us to keep the music alive. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.